are so lucky today. This is Renato Cipullo, designer and younger brother of Aldo. And as you joined Aldo in New York and worked at David Webb, worked with him throughout his years at Tiffany, as well as Cartier and his own business, this is a really unique opportunity to get a first-hand account. So we're going to focus a lot on Renato's understanding of what was going on in the studio. And as you know, typically these are going to be, conversations of researchers like myself where you're kind of making things up because the people don't exist anymore. And so we're just so lucky that Renato can share firsthand with us. So it's a unique view into the designer from an inside perspective. Aldo was born in Naples. We can advance if you want. And grew up in Rome. And everyone knows Aldo for the Love Bracelet and the nail, but he was a designer of so much more range and accomplishment. And so our goal today is to share a lot of the other work to fill in those gaps. And Aldo himself once said, you should be able to mix good design. All design is linked together. And our goal today is to show his progression from more traditional and flamboyant work to his signature abstract and modernism, and the motivation of his lifelong passion for design. So Renato, your father Giuseppe was a costume jewelry manufacturer with factories in Rome and Florence. Can you talk about your family relationship to jewelry and how Aldo moved into design, first to architecture and then to jewelry?
We got involved since we were very young. We were going to school, and after school we were working for our father. Aldo was the oldest, and our father practically was having produced merchandise in Florence, the stainless silver pieces, let's say, for instance, the compact, the lipstick, the comb, all that was manufactured in 7 different laboratories in Florence. And then for us, when he was bringing all these things in Rome, it was fantastic to see all these fascinating pieces. Then from the silver went to gold, like the main charms, and it was putting on the table this mountain of charms. It was full of stones, and it was very exciting for us to see it. Imagine we were very young. So Aldo was the oldest, obviously, was the one to understand the receptive more than us. We take it like as a joke, before like a game, playing with these colors. Anyway, Aldo started to work and go out to sell for our father in Rome, store to store. And then his dream was to come to United States. Everybody had imagined the America to New York, the movies. And actually, Aldo was one of the very first people wearing jeans, Lee jeans in Rome.
And they actually called him Americano, no?
Yeah, they were calling him Americano, especially at the church, because when there was a recital, they were asking Aldo to play always the part of the American, because Aldo was blonde. He was take out himself and our sister. They took out of our mother. Our grandfather was blonde also.
It's totally okay if you notice how gorgeous this family is.
Yeah. And that colorized green, grayish, changing color according to the weather. It was fascinating to see Aldo. Anyway, and he was going on the stage and singing, I Singing in the Rain, with a camera on the shoulder, with these jeans on the high cuff, the way they were in fashion at that time. Especially also seeing the movie, the Western movie.
Did he consider going into the family business, or always knew he was going to go out on his own?
No, always considering the business, but his appeal was America, to come to the States. So in our building was a family of American people working at the embassy, and Aldo he made friends with them and played with their children also in order to learn English. The best way to learn English is always reading children books, any language. Anyway, and these people actually, they sponsored him to come to the United States. So Aldo came into the States and he reached his dream,
So he moves in 1971 and he goes straight to the Central Park South apartment where he stays for the rest of his life?
No, incorrect.
Incorrect.
It was earlier, 1959.
Really?
Yeah, I moved in 1971.
Ah, okay.
I mean, I came back for the
So
second time.
by the time he arrives, he ends up at David Webb from
Correct.
61 to 64. So let's start with David Webb. So for those of you in the audience, if you're thinking about the Love Bracelet, you're not going to go straight to David Webb, right? So I think it's really fascinating that he was creating designs that I would describe as Rococo. Maybe we can advance to some of the Tiffany ones. Oh, this is early Aldo.
When I arrived in 1964,
That's awesome.
Aldo was always humoristic, you know. That
that's
sense
great.
of humor. He's a great brother, great person.
All right, so take a look at these and take a minute. This is all Aldo.
These Aldo designs for Tiffany. Tiffany.
So he's
And you
at,
see, excuse me, you already see some influence, the circle.
Yeah.
Then he started
Already.
at that time.
so when you look at these, and I know that when I was first reading the book, I was really surprised that they are so flamboyant and rococo. Was he executing according to the taste of the studio, or did he genuinely like the more floral, more rococo designs as well?
Well, at that time was the flow to do all flowers. Everybody was doing flowers. Somebody was doing very nice, somebody else, they were trying to do their best. But anyway, Aldo was a very Renaissance man at that time. So that's it, he got inspired, all these flower, very elaborate and beautiful three-dimensional designs. Whatever he was making, you can tell the three-dimensionality. He had a great talent on designing. Actually went also to art school here in New York.
And notice that Aldo was going to become the carpenter in gold when we think about love or the nail. But if you look at these images, he actually used hardstones and precious gems a lot.
Yes.
So can you talk a little bit about his feelings about gemstones?
Well, he liked the gemstone, the feeling. Actually, he had on his desk always sitting stones loose in order to get inspiration for a design, how to mount it. Also, Aldo, besides working for company, for Tiffany, he had his own private clientele, you know.
And another thing that I think is very interesting is that Aldo remains basically an independent designer throughout his time, certainly from Cartier on, but also it looks like it's starting at Tiffany.
Yeah.
So he moves in 1964 to Tiffany, and he was assistant to Jean Moore. Claflin was also there. And in a 1967 New York Times article, he says, "We all designed together." But in fact, the archives show that several designs attributed to Claflin were by Aldo. So did he talk to you about life in the studio and how it differed from Webb?
Yeah, Aldo told me that practically the situation at Tiffany was a little different from Webb. At Webb, it was a little more casual. You know, also Webb, David was a very familiar person. Like say, when I started to work for him, also he was very receptive, and he was actually want to sponsor me to get in a visa here in the United States. But Tiffany was a more structural, being a larger company, obviously, more people, and but everybody was very respectful toward Aldo. And Aldo practically at the time, also Donald, they were going to Italy to check up on merchandise produced in Italy out of their designs. So they were checking the production and approve it.
How did it differ for you to be inside the Webb studio following Aldo?
I was very excited. They were all friends practically. And David Webb studio at that time was in a very small townhouse, you know, 57th Street, between 5th and Madison Avenue. And at that time, it was a row of small building on 57. Now it doesn't exist anymore, you know. And whenever I was going to work over there in the morning, I had a very strong smell of coffee brewing all the time. You know, it was like an impact to wake you up. If you were ready to work at that point, you would start to work. You know.
So what was your day-to-day like at Webb? What kind of projects were you working on? Could it be anything, or you had specific tasks?
Well, practically, I was the new arrival. It was like, we say, For instance, like a busboy, the apprentice, how do we want to define it? The apprentice. And I was doing a little bit than everything. Let's say from working on necklaces, also stringing necklaces, things that many people, they didn't know how to do it because my experience with our father, especially with sapphire, ruby, and emeralds, using a particular, I came out with the idea to using wire, particular wire. So it was fascinating. One day I panicked because I lost a diamond. I didn't know what to do, and everybody, don't worry. And they find it where I washed the piece of jewelry. It came out, evidently it wasn't set properly at the moment, so I was recuperating the barrel.
Let's move on to Tiffany, where we see more examples of Aldo's Rococo work. So if you look at this piece, raise your hand if you think this would have been Schlumberger. It's really surprising, right? And I think it's surprising only because the brain tries to reduce people. When you've created the most successful piece in the history of jewelry with love, we want everything to look like love or nail. But this is as much Aldo as love. And so when we look at this piece, the story goes, I guess he was asked to create a museum piece.
At the time, Tiffany, they require Aldo to design a necklace with this large yellow sapphire. And he did a great job. I can tell the design here on the back. And if you see the actual design in your hands, you look real, everything, the three-dimensionality, the movement. Aldo had that talent really to show exactly what the piece should be. It was very well interpreted at Tiffany.
Did he study the gouache at the School of Visual Arts? Where did he learn this? It's incredible.
Well, he learned first sketches in Italy, then everybody, they want to improve, if everyone wants to improve, or you are autodidactic, or you go to school and to have some challenges also in the school, And I learned from my own experience. For instance, when I was a kid, I had a design class, and I was in the last row, and the professor gave us a design to do. It was a deer on a rock. So I was the smartest, I thought. And I took a page of paper, I put it on top of the book showing the design, the image, and I went over with a pencil. So I give it to the professor, and then at the end they say, okay, you do very well. But the best one was, it's Renato Cipullo. Cipullo, come here. Come at my desk. I was very embarrassed. He said, you are very good. You have an incredible talent. Now sit here and do again the design. At that moment, I block myself for a second, and then I shake up myself inside, interior, not physically. And I say, I had to do it, otherwise I'm going to be a joke, not only the whole class, but the whole school. So, and I focused myself, and I made the design, and the professor complimented me and said, you see, you have to have confidence on yourself. And so that one also inspired me the idea that how Aldo improved himself on doing things. Aldo had a stronger character, personality. He was a very sweet person, but at the same time, he had this strength. He was our oldest brother, and he teach us many things, He was at the same time our protector, we will say, So, and anyway, Aldo learned these things, and its role was to improve and going through different fields, and like also his evolution and designs, like he wanted to design an African collection. So what happened, he was going to the library, he purchased several books about African art. And actually I inherited also some mask, other mask my brother in Italy, Edoardo, has it. And in my apartment there is a 9-foot tall African sculpture. And that's how we get involved. He was getting involved deeply in any project he was doing, and get me involved too, and we share ideas a certain time, opinion.
I just want to point out, this is 1968, 1969. This is also the same time when Aldo's developing Love. So just to remind us that the artist is capable of a wide range.
Yeah.
It isn't just first Rococo, then Love. They're simultaneous.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I thought was really fascinating in the book, this should also make you think of David Webb. I hope it does. Right? You can see the humor, you can see the animalia, you can see the layering of the stones. But also, I think it's interesting that he visited the Museum of Primitive Art. Did you go with him? And did you discuss his inspirations?
Yes, always sharing things, let's say ideas, But he was the main subject or the original idea. I can express my opinion, but also was my mentor. He was teaching me things at the same time, And it was instigating me to have my expression, to see if I understand certain things or not, So it was like my tutor.
In the desire to create a through line, which may or may not be real, so you'll tell me.
Yeah.
This, I think, is the introduction of the notion of jewelry as a talisman and a symbol in Aldo's work, right? When we see the influence of the masks and the history that he was studying, as we turn to Love, let's have this idea in mind of, symbolic and talismanic work, because these have really deep meaning for Aldo, and I think you see it in Love, which we'll talk about. So in '69, his Tiffany contract ends. They pass on Love. So I do want to emphasize something. Love was created by Aldo independently. It was not created for Tiffany. It was not created for Cartier. Yeah. Love is Aldo's and Aldo's alone. And I think it's important to reclaim it, because when the artist creates, he was not commissioned. Correct?
That was in 1969.
Yeah, fascinating. So he presents the Love Bracelet to Cartier New York. And I also think what's really interesting here is we have Cartier New York has been sold by Claude in 1962 to the Kenton Corporation. So they are independent of Cartier France, and they can do much more creative and much more interesting things like the partnership with Aldo because they're independent. And that, I think, is very, very important to note. So to be clear, Love is currently over 50% of Cartier's global business, and it's over 80% in some markets. So Aldo created single-handedly the most successful piece of jewelry in the history of jewelry. It is sustaining a massive corporation, and I would also argue a conglomerate that owns it. So it's pretty spectacular. So where do we get Love? It becomes iconic immediately, and it combines his sensitivity. You have the notion of a chastity belt. You need two hands. You're locking them in. You have to think about the person who locked you into it. It also is this idea of eternal love, right, that you're locked in together. And I like this idea. I hope you can talk to us about it a little, about Aldo's focus on function with form. He said, and I quote, "I design jewelry that has a purpose, a kind of working relationship, a connection." Can you talk about his views on functionality? Because we don't usually talk about functionality with high jewelry.
I always thought that a piece of jewelry is something wearable. Probably to purchase a piece of jewelry is an investment. And so I thought that it should be something that you can wear all the time. You can use in any occasion. It doesn't matter the way you're dressed. That was his concept. And also, originally, it was the idea also because Aldo was a little superstitious, like every Napolitan, we're from the South originally. So, and he had a very, he liked symbology. So in many things, we always have an affinity with symbolism. So anyway, I don't want to get away from the subject, but he did this one, inspired himself on going to hardware store, and like you mentioned, he got the thought about the chastity belt, and many people, they don't know what it is a chastity belt, unless you read, something about medieval history.
When you go away to war, you lock the wife into a metal belt so that there is no temptation.
Yes. And so Aldo felt that then giving a bracelet to screw on, is locked. It's your love forever. It's yours, And that's what his idea. But sometimes people say because Aldo lost a relationship with someone, so he thought that the symbolism of togetherness to be locked out, screwed on, practically. And that's what happened. Excuse me the expression, but.
Just to give the audience a visual, please raise your hand with the love bracelet on it if you're wearing one. With Aldo's signature.
Yeah.
So he signed the inside of the bracelets up until 1985 at Cartier. They were still printed with the signature. And that actually brings me to a question about how you protect the legacy of an artist. So you're in charge of the archives, and it is your role to guard his legacy. So can you just talk a little bit about what it is like to protect an archive? Because you have a body of work that you must be constantly looking after.
It's a great honor, and for me, my daughter Serena, we treasure tremendously. Actually, I started to have organized Aldo Archive in 1972. I came back to the United States in 1971. 1972, actually, I asked Aldo to hire a dear friend of mine, Alisa, that is sitting here, help to organize the files, all the designs, And after Aldo passed, my brother and sister, my siblings, they assigned me all the records, everything, and it's organized, I savor it, I treasure it, and I share occasionally with Cartier for the presentation in 2012, the relaunch of the nail bracelet. And once in a while we go through, and we look at admiring Aldo's pieces. There are the Tiffany designs, Cartier design, Aldo personal design, the designs also that he did for the American Gem Society for the jewelry collection there is at the Smithsonian in Washington. And that was a great, great honor. Aldo was very, very proud about it.
So when we think about the current collectors, and you had a very nice compliment from one of the auction houses that an Aldo collector is fully in. Anything Aldo, they'll buy it. So how do you help them with authentication? Do you have people coming to you? Can a client come and see you to have you evaluate a piece?
Yes, they came and I called in advance, made an appointment, and it happened a couple of times. Then I find pieces that they weren't original. They were signed with Aldo name, So people, they were very disappointed when they brought it to me, but I had to say the truth, So at that point, it's very important to give credit to Aldo for what he designed and not for people try to make a design look like Aldo designs.
Well, and the interesting thing is that it might feel simple to create a very minimalist work. It's actually incredibly hard.
Yeah.
So the joke we were making earlier is, with contemporary art, people sometimes say, oh, my 8-year-old could make that. No, your 8-year-old could not. So if you look at the extensions of the nail and of love, I would argue that you can see a huge difference between what Aldo did and what people try to do when they extend the work. So as the guardian of the archive, do they talk to you about brand extensions? Do you know in advance if they're going to do something else with nail or with love or any of the other pieces?
Actually, no. No.
Yeah, it's an interesting question, right? Because there's a partnership, they have an ownership. He lives on, he's sustaining the business, right? And as the guardian of the archive, you have to make sure people understand the difference between his work and what's done afterwards.
I have to say it was a collaboration for the book, with my co-author Vivian Baker, and obviously also cooperation from Cartier, And I always want to honor Aldo for many years, and I had this idea since 2011, and finally, came through, and I have to say, Assolin, they did a great job, to honor Aldo in this way. I'm very proud of it. And Serena, I have to mention again Serena, because without her I couldn't have it done, because it was a tremendous work.
It shows.
Grazie, Serena. Serena is my daughter.
So I also want to remind us, at the time when the pieces are released and retailed by Cartier, Aldo is also maintaining his own studio and his own pieces. So when we think about the independent designers, you probably are more familiar with Tiffany and Company having a partnership with Schlumberger, for example, who had his own studio. So Aldo has his own studio at the time. How did you two work together at the studio, and how did you divide the tasks?
Well, Aldo, first of all, in the beginning, he had a very small apartment on 100 Central Park South. And that was when the period was a very Renaissance man. Then when he acquired the apartment next to it, that was much larger. He joined together the apartment, and he had his own studio in the apartment. But before was sitting at the ancient French table, designing from there. But then when in the new place, he had a full room for designing. That's at his desk, And so Aldo was making sketch, and a certain time I was doing the interpretation in the actual real jewelry, Occasionally following up a model maker, or sometimes making the model myself.
So notice in this image that there is a very large gemstone on the table. So again, not just gold. So really important, I think, to be aware that we have a huge range in the body of work. Yeah. And at this time, this is happening concurrent with Nail and with the Love rollout. As his brother, were you surprised? What was it like that it was such a big hit from the beginning? Because you have Elizabeth Taylor, the Duchess of Windsor, you have so many famous people wearing Love. What did your dad think?
Well, everybody was very proud, all the family in Italy, cousins also, everyone, also friends, because Aldo kept in touch all the time. Was a very free spirit, independent, and was also at the same time very close to the family, And I would say that everybody wanted to have a love bracelet at that time, and still now they do, And I had to mention the fact that Aldo went in a period of evolution in his designs, from the Renaissance to the most modern pieces that he made. And he can go back and forth also on styles according if he had a private client that and it was designed according to the person, the piece of jewelry, So it was very eclectic. It was no limit. At a certain time, let's say, he was going the evening to Studio 54 and coming back at 2, 3:30 and sitting at the desk and design. That was, I was admiring for that.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting to think about the fact that we're in the sort of middle of the 70s, and Aldo is very much reflecting the sea change that's happening in New York and in the world in the 70s. So as you start looking at the modern and minimalist, people are thinking about life in a quite different way. And the excesses of Studio 54, I think we don't want to leave it out, right? He is an artistic and talented person at a time when everybody is going out. Did you go with him to Studio 54?
Yes, and I was very happy because sooner we get there, You know, it was very hard to get into Studio 54. Everybody making space for Aldo to come in, you know. Actually, at the Studio 54, I also was presented the American Gem Society collection with slides, you know. And at the moment, everybody stopped dancing, you know, and were admiring. It was a very nice event.
Look at Aldo. Nobody turned Aldo down at the door. Yes. Also interesting that Tom Ford has made a career basically imitating Aldo's look. Just saying. So can we go to some examples of the geometric and fantastical from the time that are Aldo? All right. So this, I think, is incredibly interesting because this is basically at the same time. So on the right, it looks like we're looking at something that could have been Schlumberger. We're looking at something that you could have said even Claflin, but it's all Aldo. And they're together, and they're having terrible Nescafe together, and they're influencing each other. It's hard to say, right? We don't really have an understanding of the studio environment, not then and not now. And then you look at Aldo's work on his own. I do want to point out that we give Webb a lot of credit for rock crystal and hard stones. Was this the first time that Aldo started working with rock crystal? Because it remains a cornerstone for the rest of his life.
He did some pieces for David Webb, you know, but I cannot point it out. Anyway, on that I show you the evolution that Aldo had in designs, you know.
Incredible.
Yes. You know.
And again, why not, right? If you're a creative person, why wouldn't you be able to dabble in a whole variety of inspirations? And he said that he was very interested in the work of Botticelli, which surprised me at the time, but not looking at some of the more Rococo pieces.
The inspiration is there,
yeah.
You know. It's part of our culture, you know, the history you have in the blood.
And again, the U.S. is founded on immigration. We are all immigrants. Yes. And I think it's interesting to note that Aldo is both supremely American. He is an American designer, but a lot of these influences are core to being Italian.
Yeah, actually, Aldo was very proud to be American, but at the same time, he never forgot about his origin. And actually, his desire, his wish was to live 6 months in Italy, 6 months in New York, you know. And unfortunately, you know, the destiny went a different way, you know. But he grew wings, so, and he left beautiful mementos, beautiful images, beautiful little sculpture. I consider a sculpture, you know, creation than he did.
So speaking about immigration, he receives a huge honor in 1978 as an American designer because the American Gem Society asks him to make a museum collection entirely with North American gemstones and minerals. It goes to the Smithsonian in April 1979. But as you said, the debut was at Studio 54, which is kind of awesome. Can you imagine? You've got Bianca Jagger, you know, passing around spectacular pieces of jewelry and dancing. Why not? So can you talk a little bit about these pieces? Did he talk to you? Were you in the studio working on these?
Yeah, of course. Actually, the Eagle is over 261, 62 carat Arizona turquoise. And also their pieces, the eye is a sapphire from Montana. Actually, Aldo, during the period of designing the collection, he went to the actual mine in the United States, because the concept was to use all stones mined in the United States, including diamonds, you know. So, and giving opportunity to travel and to go through the mines was fascinating.
That's amazing.
Yes.
It's really spectacular work as well. So look at the seahorse.
Yeah.
Would you have thought this was Aldo before you read the book or knew about his range? It's pretty spectacular work.
Yeah.
So should we show maybe a bit of the watches and some of the other pieces before we move on? Because I think we skipped past them. Yeah. So I just want to point out some of the other iconic pieces and ask you to speak to them. Yes. So I don't know if everyone in the audience knows that Aldo also designed watches. So could you talk a bit about his view on menswear? Because some of these pieces, you can see they're on a
Well,
rather hot guy.
yeah, talk about symbology. The hand was also used in the movie The Exorcist. And at the end of the movie, there is a credit given to Cartier and to Aldo. And show the pieces that Aldo was producing at that time, obviously. It was Aldo exclusive. And what is the other question?
The watches.
Oh, the watch. The watch, not the watches, the watch. The watch that is at the Smithsonian.
Yeah.
That one was also, it is with Montana square sapphire.
Spectacular. And
and,
also, I think,
We work on team to make the watch because I always had the passion for watches, and Aldo didn't know about the technicality, and so we work on team on that.
can you talk a bit about his view of men's jewelry? Because he was a pioneer and he won an award for men's jewelry also.
Yeah, actually, he got an award, but also designed the award. They asked him to design it, you know. It's at that time they call it the Lulu. After they changed the name and they call it the Aldo. So it's again another reconnaissance, an honor, you know, honoring him. And also got the Cotisarc award, you know. And
I thought it was funny in the book that you said he hated pinky rings on men.
oh yeah, it's true.
Don't do the pinky
You know,
ring.
like we're drinking your coffee, you go like this, show the pinky.
So Aldo passes away on January 31st, 1984 from a double heart attack. I should
Yeah.
point out his birthday is the day after tomorrow. He would have been 86.
Yes.
As he said, quote, giving and receiving jewelry should be emotional, something with meaning, to be remembered and cherished. And you now have the role of preserving and cherishing his memory and archives, but alongside your own work. So what is it like to be an independent designer? You're designing for yourself while also guarding his heritage.
Well, like Aldo, being a free spirit, also myself, like my brother Eduardo, our sister, in the family, all became free spirit because of our father was a padre padrone, so-called, you know. So practically we were under this domination of this father. One by one, practically we escaped from him, if you want to say so. Aldo in United States. My brother Eduardo, one morning, he said, Papa, I go one moment to the beach. He went to Paris, he didn't come back for 2 years. My sister got married, you know. I left 3 times, and 2 times he come and catch me, you know.
How
So-
would you say your design vision differs from Aldo's?
Well, there is one thing. First of all, I had a certain idea, then I repurpose it again today, and I call it 70s. Okay? And it's certain people also at the time say, oh, you want to use your brother's name because it's famous. At that time, I signed my pieces Renato C. You know, in the beginning, I signed Renato Cipullo. So in order not to create confusion, I was signing Renato C. So also to show I was proud and also not taking advantage of my brother's fame.
Will you talk us through the pieces behind you?
Oh yeah, that one is a symbolic piece, like I was saying. Also, I call it the eye on the right hand. You know, it's a diamond, sapphire, cyan, sapphire, and this is a piece from the 70s. You know, actually 1972. You know, it's and it's look very contemporary. Like I learned this thing also from Aldo. You know, the piece is good forever, you know. And I like to have pieces that have a certain consistent weight and only 18 karat or platinum, you know.
You also hand make chains. I'm wearing a coin
Yeah.
necklace that Renato made by hand.
Yeah, yes. I put pride, and like Aldo also was saying that working make you very proud. And So also myself, I'm a stankable worker, you know, and we put our pride on whatever we do. You know, we'll make sure that something is beautiful and well done. You know, the concept is there, you know, and practically, sorry I have to say that, but it's part of our Italian culture. It's not only beauty, but to be also quality. It's the two things combined.
I like that answer.
Yes.
So how about the piece at the top? So we have the chain that you make.
Oh yes, that's my version of amore. It's a little word with a keyhole, amore. You know, open your heart. You know, in the sense that symbolizes.
So we're going to show you some original pieces. I'm actually wearing one of the steps bracelets that Aldo made for family, correct?
Correct. That was a version of the piece that he did for Cartier. There was like the original is 4 row all joined together, and that was individually was given as a present to a family member in Italy.
Look out, I might make a run for the door.
Yes.
So
It's
maybe
beautiful, it's contemporary. You can wear it with a sweater,
anything.
with a pair of jeans, an elegant evening. You can think maybe it's Art Deco, it's mechanical. You can interpret it. We can have different interpretation if you like.
And I
Like
think
slick, clean, you know, like you say in English, slick.
sleek. And very much captures, I think, that 70s aesthetic. So we don't have images of Aldo's place on Fire Island, but maybe I don't want to leave out the notion of circles again,
Yeah,
which
it
you
was
talked
beautiful.
about. So could you maybe tell us a bit about the role of circles and what the
Yes.
house looked like?
Actually, he had all the windows, he had redone the windows, and they look like to be on a boat, you know, like rounded corners, you know. Also the doors, you know, the entrance, also the pool, the deck, all had rounded corners. It was a beautiful feeling, you know. The deck was magnificent. You know. He put his own impronta, we say in Italian, his own stamp, you know, imprinted his own image in the house, you know, he expressed it. He had this beautiful house on the lagoon in Fire Island.
When you look at Webb and Tiffany now, do you see elements of Aldo that continue in the work?
Yes, absolutely. I'm very proud whenever I come around, you know, come around the piece or images or on papers, on books. It's, I feel very, very honored and very proud to have that they had a brother like this, and so also my family, all of us. Aldo was a very charming human being. Was a phenomenal person.
I think we're good for time, right? So maybe I'll pause here, and I'm going to bring the tray, and if you'll just talk to us a little bit about the actual Aldo pieces that you brought.
Okay. It's a very nice audience.
So we start with the real thing.
Okay. This bracelet, it's one of the very first pieces made in 1969. Actually, it's inside the stamp, copyright 1969. And it's a stamp Cartier, but in a very small character, because Cartier at that time, they didn't have the large stamp like you see in it on a later bracelet. And also this one is hand signed by Aldo inside. So that's what make it for me most precious and rare piece.
And if we let people check them later, make sure you think
Yes.
about the weight of the piece, because it is entirely different from a modern one.
Yeah, more or less is a similar weight. At certain time also the consistency change according to the size, you know. So, and I'm very proud to honor it. This one I acquired through an estate that they show it to me, and I say absolutely I must do have it. And the people decide to offer it to me, and I purchase it. And this is not for sale, absolutely.
I tried.
Okay. These are the earrings that are practically a matching set of the bracelet. Aldo had interpreted in different color, like amethyst, citrine, this black onyx, and they're curvy, so they go very close to the ear. You know, actually, when we're young and kids, our father used us as a models, so to try it on, you know, to see if they were comfortable, if how they look, you know. So that was very important. So we weren't shy, you know. So we learn from the basic, you know, like I say, when we were little. Probably our father was a padre padrone, but also we learn a lot from him, you know.
I suspect this one's going to be the most surprising.
Okay. This is from Aldo collection, Aldo Cipullo collection. No Tiffany, no Cartier, no David Webb. That was Aldo Cipullo, Aldo Cipullo, limited, or I would say unlimited. Unlimited, why? Because was no limit to imagination, creativity. This Italian coral, pink coral, the center there is a diamond, and the lips, they're very three-dimensional, and the necklace is all done in individual pieces and sit very comfortably on the neck. That is very important. That a piece of jewelry also had to be comfortable to wear.
Again, you have the focus on function.
Correct.
Yeah. Fascinating.
Functionality, aesthetic, beauty.
So I thank you. I think at this point maybe we'll wrap and interact with the audience a little bit.
Yes.
But
Yes,
I
with
know
pleasure.
I learned a lot talking to you, and I thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to have your insight into the full spectrum as the world was changing. It's just so interesting. And his work, of course, lives on.
Yeah. It's a great opportunity once again to honor Aldo, all the recognition that he deserved. We were going around in the city, and we like to make stops in several places. One of those places was a hardware store, because Aldo on his desk, he always had certain pieces, mechanical pieces. So, and was looking for, evidently, ideas, you know. And that's how we started the nail bracelet. You know, he was buying bolts, nail, and play around. And that's how he started the nail bracelet. But also, the concept of the nail bracelet was to be worn with the love bracelet, you know, or any other piece of jewelry. And so that's how Aldo got this inspiration. White also, at that time, Aldo made in his production a few pieces in pink. So originally, Aldo was producing those bracelets.
And the final collection of Aldo's, retailed by Cartier, was entirely in silver.
Aldo sold the design of the love bracelet, Cartier, you know, and then follow up the sale of the nail bracelet. And Aldo at the same time was doing his own production. Aldo also was producing pieces of jewelry that was selling to Cartier. Let's say, was working as a vendor, you know, his own designs. Then till Cartier they were buying, they were exclusive Cartier pieces. And then later they become only Aldo pieces, obviously, you know. And Aldo, he didn't design only jewelry. Aldo designed also silverware. Aldo designed furniture. Aldo was very eclectic. Was, you know, if you are a good designer, you know, and Aldo was showing his modernist style on his jewelry. He showed it also on the furniture. He designed a table with 4 nail legs, you know, a piece of glass sustained by 4 legs. made out as a shape of nails. And he did actually his own studio. He had the top made out of wood. But the coffee table was the way I describe it. And also he had 4 ottoman, made with nails. It was very elegant, very functional, very contemporary. And it was his way to express modernism.
If you're asking about protection for the artist or vendor, it's really challenging. The beginning, I believe, is a gentleman's agreement. It doesn't have a lot of protection for the artist. And something that comes up in jewelry a lot is that it's impossible to patent a design. So Cartier has control, I think, of love. But it's also partly because at the time, vendors, except for Schlumberger at Tiffany and a few others, the vendors would not have had the kind of protections that we typically associate with design now for other businesses. And it's very, very difficult to enforce.
Well, if you're referring to the political situation at that time, I understand that, it was the 70s were an obscure and at the same time exciting time, Obscure because it was still going on the war, and exciting time because it was Studio 54 and various nightclubs where all the new generation of artists, like Andy Warhol, Halston, Valentino, my brother, they were keeping alive the city, the excitement. And there were numerous parties, at least 5 days a week there were parties. And let's say I was lucky because, let's say I lived the Dolce Vita in Italy, and after in the 70s, I lived the Dolce Vita in New York. That's the way I call it, And it's true. So it was that was an environment of very creative mind. It was very, very exciting. So Aldo interpreted the Love Bracelet out of love, because love, it's always the basic thing, And Aldo showed his love to friends, family, and whoever was meeting him or knowing him. Aldo was welcoming, and shared, and he also gave, it was a good listener, but also giving good advice, The symbolism of the Love Bracelet is very strong. Now imagine that it is already more than half century than the Love Bracelet itself. There is no piece of jewelry in the world that is being sold for so long. Aldo, at that point, with all his talent, he wanted to be recognized, to be recognized as a true artist. So I think that Sharon was saying, the artist wants to be protected, his work, and recognized for what he's doing, what he does. I remember Aldo also, when I went on my own, like I was saying, free spirit, it was saying always, Renato, whenever you do something, do a copyright. Renato, don't trust people because you presenting your designs, they want to have made a production. Before you know, they already copy you. And it happened twice to me, because I was stubborn, I didn't listen, and I learned my lesson. But anyway, it's true.
Tiffany at the time was famous for copying vendor ideas. They would be submitted and they would pass, and then the idea would show up. So for someone coming out of the studio who had seen that for years, you can imagine what he would feel like. And the work was not designed for Tiffany, it was his own. So presenting his own would have been very scary, given what they were known to be doing at the time.
Our business I call the jungle, because everybody is there, try to get it for free, new ideas, Like, for instance, when Aldo passed away, I was at a show in Vicenza, the jewelry show, and there were some jewelers that I know for many years, and they were doing things inspired by Aldo Design, for instance, with the screws. And when Aldo passed away, they say, we owe to your brother a lot because our company survived out of Aldo's ideas. And that, again, you know, it's an honor. They pay respect, you know, and from an original idea, see how many people they took advantage and the benefit. That at that point, there is room for everyone, but it's important to promote your own idea. If you have certain pride and you claim yourself to be a designer, must come with your own idea, absolutely. That's the way to do it.
Thanks for coming, everybody.
Thank you to everyone.